What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to talk about the overall market, how it's looking thus far, what's happening with all these different indicators so far, and what's happening with the Cybertruck event and how it's affecting Tesla. But before I break anything down, all this information, before I talk about why tomorrow is going to be another important day for Tesla in the markets, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. So anyways, let's talk about how Tesla is doing. Let's talk about how the market is looking. Tesla had a very, very interesting day. Going back to yesterday, we saw this thing trying to break above this 250 resistance right up here. It was trying to, and this thing ended up failing. And I warned everyone that if Tesla failed to break 250, we could see this thing start sinking. And I gave you guys some bearish signals, and we saw this thing starting to sink. Also, right here, we saw the same thing play out even for today. And I warned you guys that we might see Tesla drop a bit, especially after the Cybertruck event. I was leaning more in that direction, but then I also mentioned that, during the event itself, anything could happen. You never know if Tesla could have like bounced or not. But I told you that after the event ends, I was anticipating some potential downside. I was leaning a bit more in that direction. And that's what ended up happening to Tesla. So Tesla was dumping, at least for the majority of the day. We closed very, very weak around this 240 area. And then after the Tesla Cybertruck event ended, after the event ended very close to market close, we saw this thing just continue to tank. And Tesla is currently around like 235 a share, pretty down. But once again, guys, we just want to watch this on a level to level basis because even though Tesla has dropped quite a bit, it is not basically dead. It's not like sinking insanely hard to the point where it's going to be collapsing. We're going to see a massive, massive amount of capitulation or anything like that. There's no sign of that much selling just yet since Tesla's still holding a critical support. So I'm going to be breaking down details about this over the next couple of minutes. But I first want to talk about the markets. I want to talk about the news and the Cybertruck event and everything like that first. So what's happening to the market? Well, we had another crazy day on SPY. Basically, this thing was very flat for the day and started selling off. And we saw some more significant selling that continued as time went on. The selling continued, and this ended up being a trap as we started to see buyers stepping in. SPY was way down here, which is where they started to grab some liquidity. And then during the final about 20 minutes, but I would say more towards the last 10 minutes, we saw a monstrous pump at the very end of the day, turning SPY green. Remember, this was selling off for almost the entire day. Then all of a sudden, at the very end, they did this. And the reason for this was not only because they wanted to squeeze shorts, but another reason was because of the fact that it was the last close before November would end. So with that being the case, right, with November ending, these institutions want to rebalance their positions. And because of all of that, we tend to see moves like this sometimes. And that's what ended up playing out. So we saw SPY basically pushed up very, very nicely at the very end, closing in the green. But then during the after hours, the market started selling off again. SPY is down quite a bit in the after hours. The QQQ managed to actually close red. It failed to even turn green. And this thing is down even more in the after hours. So I wouldn't necessarily say the market is strong. We're still seeing some weakness in tech and also on the QQQ side. And Tesla is currently down another 2% in the after hours, once again selling off quite a bit. We're now back in the 234s, looking relatively weak. Now, even though Tesla's selling off, it hasn't broken a critical support yet for me to turn even more bearish. So it hasn't done that yet. There's still hope for it to try to range trade. So I'm going to be breaking down more details in just a few minutes. Once again, let's talk about tomorrow first. So once again, for today, all the data was quite decent, by the way. It wasn't too bad. The market held up in the beginning, but then started to sell off over time. But for tomorrow, we have Barr from the Fed giving a speech. Then 15 minutes after market open, we have the PMI report for the S&P Global Manufacturing coming out. This is some manufacturing data. This gives us a gauge of how manufacturing is looking. And then at 10 o'clock a.m., we have a bunch of data coming out. We have the ISM Manufacturing PMI, construction spending, and all these ISM manufacturing pieces of data, which are going to be very, very important. So this is huge because as this data comes out, it's going to give us a good understanding of how the economy is looking, the different structures in the manufacturing orders, and etc. It's going to be very, very important to expect some volatility. All right, so 15 minutes and 30 minutes after market open tomorrow, expect some volatility when all this data comes out. And then after all of that, at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have Jerome Powell giving a speech. And when this guy opens his mouth, the whole market is going to most likely move. So make sure you're prepared for that. Who knows what Powell is going to do? He could give us one more pump in the markets, or he could cause the market to sell off. You never know. You just need to be prepared just to be safe. But regardless of what Powell causes, I think that there's a good chance that the market still has some downside coming very soon. I'm not sure if the market's going to start selling off pretty aggressively tomorrow, or if we're going to see like one more pump thanks to Powell just to end it, and then we start selling off a bit more a little bit later, maybe going into next week. I'm not 100% sure, guys, but I still anticipate some downside is coming, and we're just going to wait and see what Powell has to say, because once again, what he says could affect the markets, and I don't entirely know what he's going to say exactly. So you just want to be very careful. Going into some more earnings, I just want to call out so that we have Dell coming out in just a few minutes. And besides that, there's not really a whole lot left for today, especially for the week. For other indicators, some indicators when it comes to the way the market is moving suggest that the market is very, very risky to be buying in, not financial advice. But I say that because the market is greedy, right? We're very greedy right now. We're seeing market momentum at extreme greed. We're seeing the put and call positions right now on extreme greed mode, which tends to be what happens when the market is topping. This is still the case right now, so just be very careful if you're trying to like be a mega bull, because generally this is when the market starts to turn. So you want to be very careful. When it comes to Tesla, excuse me, sorry guys. When it comes to Tesla, they're basically releasing PowerShare bidirectional charging, which is very, very cool for the Cybertruck. As of right now, it's just for the Cybertruck, and this is once again very, very cool. So this is part of the many new features involving the Cybertruck. I think that this could be very useful for them, and on top of that, this could be very useful for people who are like in emergency situations and such. So it's something that's very cool. On top of this, I just want to mention a couple of specs about the Cybertruck. So when it comes to the costs, I believe that the main base price was ranging between $61,000 to over $100,000, depending on which variant you get with the particular specs. There are also some other like cost saving methods and like write offs that could make it like a little bit more affordable, but I'm not going to talk too much about that. For now, you guys can see it's on Tesla's website. We have some new things that came out. During the event, Elon Musk was riding one of these. He came in and he just started to talk about the specs. Basically, there wasn't really anything else. He just continued to talk about it. They had an assistant basically hold a baseball, and they threw it at the window, and it didn't break. It just bounced off of it, which is really cool, which shows how durable and hard the glass is, if anything. The Cybertruck in itself is said to be bulletproof, which is incredible. I know a lot of people would love that. However, the glass is it's not bulletproof by default. I think it's just optional. So I just wanted to make that clear. And then these ranges and stuff will depend on the model. I'll show you guys the ranges and more specs a little bit later. But the towing capacity is about 11,000 pounds, which is super, super awesome. We have more videos of it, just like people drifting with them. It's very, very cool. No paints, no chips. It just looks very, very futuristic. It looks like something you'll see out of like Back to the Future. It looks pretty, pretty cool. And you can see the website right over here, how it looks when it's in different terrains. Very durable, very new looking axles that are used for it. The interior looks very, very nice as well. You guys can see how it looks right here with the steering wheel. And the steering circle is actually less than like the Model S from what I believe, so that it's more easy to maneuver in like smaller environments. That's something that Elon Musk was talking about. It looks very comfortable on the inside. Pretty cool. I'd say it looks pretty nice on the inside too. There's a theater on wheels, something else that's pretty cool about it. And now I'm just going to try to go to the bottom, the very bottom, which is where we have more information about the specs. So we have the rear wheel drive version right here with a range of 250 miles. The acceleration is 6.5 seconds to go from 0 to 60. Very, very cool. Top speed of 112 miles per hour with a towing capacity of 7,500. This is the most affordable one, excuse me. This is what it looks like. You guys can see the height right here is about, this is like 70 inches tall and about 223 inches long. So very, very cool stuff. Then we have the AWD version of it with a longer range. You can also extend the range to 470 miles. The acceleration is 4.1 seconds to go from 0 to 60. All-wheel drive. Very, very cool. At 11,000 pounds of towing, which is very, very awesome. You can see the weight and more details right over here. You could freeze the video or just like basically take a screenshot of this if you want more details. If you want to just like look at this, and you could see the charging speeds up to about 136 miles added in 15 minutes, but that depends on the adapter. It depends on like the source and things like that too. When it comes to the Cyber Beast, okay, this one is, in my opinion, one amazing beast. This thing has a crazy range of between 320 miles or even up to like 440 plus miles, depending on the extender. They also have very, very strong acceleration time at 2.6 seconds. Top speed is 130 miles per hour, which is insane. Very, very awesome. And you can see it's very heavy, has 5 adult seats. On top of that, very, very cool stuff here. You guys can see how fast it could charge and stuff like that. So cool, cool, cool stuff. You guys can see the model right here. Very, very awesome, very amazing vehicle. I'm very excited for the future of Tesla. For the short term, Tesla's working on the volume production phase, but for now, this is just one step in the right direction. They're starting deliveries. They delivered the truck to many of their employees. Good news. I'm very happy. We're going to enjoy it while it lasts. But Tesla is down in terms of its share price. We had high volume for today at 132 million, very flat volume, but then it started to sell off more. Tesla's also one of the most shorted stocks in the market right now. I saw a short volume of like 50 million. And on top of that, price price ratio is dropping as Tesla's becoming weaker. When it comes to seasonality, we're only green about 48.9% of the time on Fridays. So almost a coin flip, but nothing too crazy. November tends to be a strong month historically, but we're just ending November. December tends to be a bit weaker, but I think that to start off December, we could be a little weak for Tesla. Tesla may have a weak start to December, but I think that the second half of it could be stronger, and I think the market could still rally towards the end of the year. I think the market could rally towards the final 1 to 2 weeks of December, but for the first 1 to 2 weeks, I think we could be bearish. Okay, so that's my view of the market. For the first 2 to 3 weeks, we could be bearish, and then for the last 2 to 1 weeks, I would say we could be very bullish. I'll be breaking this down more in later on. I don't want to focus too much on the end of the year. Let's just focus on the charts in front of us. Let's start off with Tesla. How is Tesla looking? The answer is not too great. We're continuing to sell off. We're looking very weak right now, but we're just barely holding the 200 EMA on the 4-hour time frame around this 230 area. So watch 233-ish very, very carefully to see if Tesla could hold this. If we close below this, this is going to be a bearish signal. And the next level is going to be 230 basically, which is where our daily 200 EMA happens to be. So here's what I see for Tesla. It all depends on tomorrow, okay? We could see Tesla drop a bit, retest 232 to 230. If we do drop below it, it's okay. We just need to close above 232 to be in a decent place. 232 to 233. If we close below 232, there's a risk of Tesla dropping more, so you want to be very careful. So watch support at 232 to 233, and then 230 is going to be very important. We have to hold above 230. Okay, we have to try to hold it. If we end up closing below 230, that's going to be a very bearish signal, and Tesla's going to start sinking a lot more. So watch this support down here. That's going to be pivotal for Tesla. For resistance, we have 235 because right now Tesla's below that. So 235 is resistance, 236.5, 237.5. Then we have 238. 238 is going to be some strong resistance. If we get above that, then 240 is next. But as of right now, Tesla's looking relatively weak. Now, I also want to call out that on the daily time frame on Tesla, if you look at the daily charts, we have this gap down here. We have this big gap down here at this 223 area. If we lose 230 and we close below it, we're going to be sinking down to fill that gap pretty quickly. There's going to be a bigger rug pull if Tesla loses 230. So watch that support very carefully. I would say this whole range is very important, 230 and like 232 to 233. So what do I think Tesla will do? Well, this is where things become tricky because it depends on the reaction. What typically happens is we see this thing pop when we open. So if you look at the last like 4 days, it tends to pop as we open, then sell off later on. So we might see some buyers try to defend and push it back to 238. And it's going to depend on Jerome Powell's speech and also how the market reacts. So we might see Tesla rebound a bit, but if Jerome Powell's speech causes like a rug pull, or if Tesla just underperforms on its own, we could see this pop and then start dropping and kind of range trading between 232 and 238 for the majority of the day. However, if at the very end of the day, let's just say after Powell's speech, the whole market starts selling off, make sure you watch 230. We got to close above that, or else Tesla could start sinking even harder. All right, so I think Tesla's going to be range trading between 232 and 238 for the majority of the day. And then we might start selling off more if we end up losing 232. And then, the next level is 230. If we lose 230, we turn even more bearish. So I think that there's going to be a risk of some downside. For us to try to get some hope for the bulls, we need to see Tesla get back above 242. As of right now, I think it's just going to range trade for a bit and maybe sell off a bit. But I'm not sure if we're going to close below 230, but there's a risk of that happening. And there is a risk of Tesla selling off more aggressively when you look at the daily time frame. So you want to be careful. Make sure you watch your levels carefully. And we'll see how it goes with Powell's speech. But no, Tesla may range trade for a bit and then sell off a little bit, especially if we end up losing support. So just be very, very careful. For SPY, we still have that quadruple bearish divergence. This thing was bearish throughout the entire day. Then at the very last minutes, this thing started pushing back up because of the fact that these institutions were repositioning. So if we get another pump thanks to Powell, it is possible we get one more rally back up towards the high we made before this thing rejects, or it could just reject from here. But one thing worth noting is that the daily time frame is still looking kind of weak on SPY. We still have a bearish divergence. So even though the daily candlestick's kind of like decent, we could pop a bit, then drop, or start dropping from here, depending on what Jerome Powell says. If we pop a little bit, this just means that the drop is going to be delayed. If Powell causes some kind of pump, if Powell does not give us the pump, if we just start dropping, then that's it. We have to try to hold 453 for there to be hope for the bulls. If we lose 453, I think SPY is going to be ready to start sinking. I think that we're going to be on our way down to 450, right where this imbalance is. Then we have 447 at the 20 EMA. Then we have this gap fill all the way down towards like the 440 area. So what do I think is going to happen? We could pop a bit and then drop depending on Powell, or we could just drop from here. I still anticipate some downside. I still think it's very possible, but we have to wait and see what Jerome Powell says and what happens with the manufacturing data. If the market holds up tomorrow, there could still be selling for the next week. So don't necessarily become too comfortable. And I still anticipate some downside will eventually come. All right. It all depends on Powell too, but we're still looking kind of weak. The QQQ of all things. And actually, before I talk about the QQQ, let me just like show you SPY on TradingView. I think I kind of skipped that over. We still have that head and shoulders on SPY too. Let me just call that out before I talk about the QQQ. We have this head and shoulders like pattern as well on SPY. Watch and see if we get this like liquidity sweep. Do they try to push us again to grab more liquidity? Then they drop us, or do they just drop us from here depending on the manufacturing numbers and Powell? There is still a risk of downside, so just be very careful. Anyways, make sure you watch 455. Then we have this channel at 454, 453.5, and 453 are next. If we lose 453, we turn a lot more bearish. All right, I just want to make that as clear as possible. For resistance, don't forget to watch 456.5, 457.5, and 458. A pop and drop or a drop from here is very probable still. The QQQ of all things looks weak compared to SPY because of Tesla and also because of how Nvda has been looking. It's more impacted by those things than SPY. We have a head and shoulders like pattern on the QQQ. We have this imbalance up here. So it might try to pop first and then end up dropping. So it could try to pop to like 390 again, then reject, or it could just reject from here. But look at the structure. We had this high here. We made a lower high here. We had this like low right here too. We made a lower low, lower high. It's continuing to downtrend. So the QQQ is looking weaker than SPY. The daily time frame looks weaker. We're about to get a bearish cross on the PPO. Could pop towards 390, then reject, but I anticipate it's going to be retesting 388 and 386.5. If we lose support, I expect it to come down towards 383, 381.7. Then this gap is going to get filled all the way down to 377. So I anticipate some downside, especially on the daily. Make sure you watch your levels carefully. I still think this thing has downside coming. We could pop first, depending on Jerome Powell, and then sell off. But with the quadruple bearish divergence, the QQQ is still looking relatively weak. When it comes to Nvda, this is also looking relatively weak. You could see this thing has been selling off quite aggressively. I was talking about how this thing could actually sell off towards 468 or so, or maybe a bit lower. If we broke that, we ended up getting a sell-off on Nvda, just like the QQQ. What do I think Nvda is going to do? Well, it's going to try to rebound just a tiny bit. There's a chance it might rebound a bit thanks to Powell before it sells off even more. It might try to rebound towards like 468 to 470, then reject, or it could just continue sinking. It might pop and then drop, or just continue dropping. And I think that the move could fail. It may make an attempt to rebound and fail, and I think that there's more risk of downside. I think that we're going to be watching our very important daily 50 EMA at 459. If this fails us, Nvidia is going to be on its way down towards this lower level down here. We have this key support at 459. Then we have this imbalance down here at 455 coming next. then the next level is going to be like 451. But I'm not going to worry about that just yet. Watch 459 on Nvidia. We'll see if that holds. If we lose that, we're going to turn even more bearish, and 455 is next. Right now, the chart is looking bearish, looking weak, could pop and drop or just drop from here. So make sure you're prepared for that. This could drag the QQQ and the NASDAQ down. On top of that, when it comes to Apple is not looking that strong because when you look at the chart, let me just show you the chart. We had this head and shoulders like pattern. We had this left shoulder up here. We had this head. We had a right shoulder. And look at what Apple has been doing for the last couple of days, right? We had a lower high. So we had this high up here. We made this low. Then we made this lower high. Then we made this lower low, lower high, lower low. We're trying to break out. We have an imbalance up here. So it could try to push again, but I don't see Apple breaking out and pushing up higher. I think that this thing is just downtrending very slowly, and it's not going to fall in a straight line. It's kind of rocky, but I still think there's downside coming. Look at the daily chart. We're about to get a bearish cross on the PPO. Could pop towards 190, then reject and start sinking for 186, or it could just sink from here. We also have this gap to fill down here towards this 185 area. Then we all have another one down at 182. So look for a pop and drop or a drop from here, and I anticipate some downside. I still think that's very probable for Apple. Finally, for the IWM, just wanted to call out that the IWM on the daily chart is looking kind of weak. If we end up losing support around this 177 area, I anticipate some downside. It tried to bounce a bit, but you can see the candlestick is still kind of red. If we lose 179, I expect it to come down more, so there's still potential for that to happen. On Microsoft, this thing ended up just barely closing green. It came down for the majority of the day, then it just barely popped a bit. I think that this thing looks bearish because of the 4-hour bearish divergence. We're also forming what could be like a head and shoulders. So I could see this kind of pop a bit towards like 380, but I think that Microsoft is going to be due for some downside. I think it's going to eventually make its way back down towards the 370 area. Look for a pop and drop. I still anticipate that. My view has not changed. On AMD, it's going to depend on Powell's speech and stuff too, but we still have this bearish divergence. Look for a backtest of 122, then a rejection. And I think it's going to be coming back down to 116. On the VIX, okay, this thing is starting to uptrend a bit. We want to see this thing break 13.37 to turn more bullish. It still is technically uptrending. The daily is about to get a bullish cross in the PPO. I want to see this thing try to break a bit higher, and this could happen because of the markets. So just be very careful. The SQQQ of all things looks more bullish than the VIX. We have this gap to fill at 17.4, and this thing is trying to get a bullish cross in the PPO, which suggests that there could be some downside. On the dollar index, this thing is starting to turn bullish. I want to see this thing break 104. I was talking yesterday about 103.5. That's what happened. And thus far, it's looking more bullish. Coinbase looks a bit more bearish after this rejection. Watch support at 122. If we lose this, we have 118 to 117. That's going to be a key support. If we lose that, then the next level is going to be around this 110 area. So I think that this thing could pop a little bit and then eventually come back down, but it's starting to turn, and there's a risk of it coming back down to 117. For Google, we look bearish because when you look at the daily time frame, there's a gap down here. Well, there's one gap. There's another gap down here at 127. We're about to get a bearish cross in the PPO. This looks very bearish. Look for 135 to be back tested and then a rejection. I think it's going to come down to 127. If you look at Amazon, we have a head and shoulders like pattern that's developing. We're about to get a bearish cross in the PPO. We could backtest 146.5, then reject and come down to 143. So I still anticipate some downside. On Meta, I'm seeing the same thing. Meta's looking a bit more bearish on the daily time frame. We could backtest 329, then eventually sink back down. I think it's going to backtest or retest 325. If that fails us, 319 is going to be our next level at the 50 EMA. And if that fails us, there's going to be more downside. So I think 319 is coming from Meta. I see some downside in tech. SPY, it tried to pop at the very end because it's the last day of November. They're just trying to make their balance sheets look better. But I think there's still potential for downside. I still think the charts are suggesting downside is coming. I don't know if there's going to be one more pop in before we drop or if we just drop from here. That's going to depend on Jerome Powell's speech and the manufacturing data. But the charts are not lying. I still see potential for downside. My view has not changed. Same thing for Tesla. We were talking about downside. It's already dropping so hard. So it is what it is. It just shows that, yes, a lot of these plays are still playing out. Tesla has critical support. We want to see Tesla try to hold 233 to 232. If we lose that range, the next level is going to be 230. We got to hold that. If we break it, we have a gap to fill it. That's going to take us all the way down to the lower 220s. All right, so Tesla not looking the strongest. Be very careful, guys. Make sure you watch your levels. We could see it range trade tomorrow between 238 and 232, but it has the risk of selling off. So if it starts selling off and losing support, more downside is coming, and Tesla could turn even weaker than that. All right, guys, that's what I see for tomorrow. Make sure you watch your levels, do what you have to do. I'll see you guys very, very soon tomorrow morning. Thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget, once again, we have the manufacturing data coming out 15 and 30 minutes after market open. The most important time will be at 10 o'clock a.m. or 30 minutes after open. Then we have Jerome Powell's speech at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get ready, guys. Do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Tesla to the moon because the long term is still very bright despite this sell off. And peace out.